How a woman murdered her parents and hid the secret for 4 years. You caught the bad guy. McCullough's confession was captured on police body cam footage. Virginia McCullough knew why the police had smashed through her front door, but part of her wondered why it took them so long to discover. She had murdered her parents. Cheer up, at least you've caught the bad guy, she calmly told the officers, handcuffing her. Neighbors thought John and Lois McCullough had retired to the seaside, but the reality was they were callously poisoned by their daughter. Why did she do it? The goings-on inside the McCullough family home in Great Baddow near Chelmsford, Essex, were becoming increasingly secretive in 2019. Relatives were asked to stay away and friends were told Mr. and Mrs. McCullough had retired to the Clacton area on Essex's Sunshine Coast. The gruesome reality was very different. It would be 4 years before anyone found out the horrors that took place behind closed doors. On Pump Hill, John McCullough, a retired business studies lecturer, had been fatally poisoned, and the 70-year-old's body was hidden in a crudely built tomb made out of breeze blocks and blankets. The corpse of his 71-year-old wife, Lois, was stashed behind sleeping bags and duvets in an upstairs wardrobe. Mrs. McCullough had been battered with a hammer and stabbed, but she too had also been poisoned with prescription medication administered by her daughter. Virginia McCullough, 36, was handed a life sentence at Chelmsford Crown Court for their murders to serve a minimum of 36 years. On Friday, the curtains were always drawn and you couldn't see if anybody was in the house, said Phil Sargent, who lived next door to the McCulloughs for 20 years. They were just like shadows. They'd moved very quickly from A to B. Mr. Sargent now knows why there was such secrecy at his neighbor's house. I find it quite difficult even to say that Virginia murdered her parents or killed her parents, he added. She'd come across as quite pleasant. She was funny. She was irreverent as well. She had a dark sense of humor. Fantasist. In September 2023, Essex Police took a call from Essex County Council's safeguarding team. A GP at MR and Mrs. McCullough's registered practice had raised a concern for their welfare, having not seen them for some time. The corpses of MR and Mrs. McCullough lay inside the family home for 4 years. Essex Police. John McCullough's body was hidden in a makeshift tomb, covered with blankets and paintings. Their absences had been explained by their daughter, who offered a range of excuses for each appointment she canceled on her parents' behalf. Conveniently for her, the country had been in COVID-enforced lockdowns for a large period of time. They had not been seen, but when police spoke to McCullough, it became clear something was not adding up. Why were her parents always out of the area? Alan Thompson, who rented a television to the McCulloughs, also had his suspicions. It followed a phone call from McCullough abruptly canceling the rental on her parents' behalf. When Mr. Thompson's staff arrived at the family home to pick it up, they were told they could not enter the property, and the TV was already prepared by the front door. I got the feeling perhaps she was a bit of a fantasist, but no way would I have thought she'd be a murderer, he said. I deserve what's coming. When police raided the property, it was not the first time they had visited. Weeks prior to the discovery of the bodies, McCullough invited officers inside to discuss an allegation of an assault against her. Only she knew the intent of this call, but some believed she was testing the water. Ultimately, the assault allegation came to nothing. Post-mortem examinations found Mrs. McCullough died of stab wounds and her husband was fatally poisoned. Although both had been poisoned, McCullough was more forthcoming. When officers returned in September 2023, I did know that this day would come eventually, she confessed. I deserve to get what's coming sentence-wise, because that's the right thing to do, and then that might give me a bit of peace. Documents recovered inside the property painted a picture of a woman desperately trying to keep her parents from discovering a financial black hole she had dug, abusing their goodwill. She had been living rent-free, spending their money and racking up large credit card debts in their names. Forged letters showed McCullough had been tricking her parents into thinking they had lost money through scams. In reality, it was money frittered away by their daughter. Virginia McCullough continued to spend her parents' pensions after murdering them. To them, she was well qualified, suitably employed, and working hard towards becoming an artist of the future she claimed would also bring financial benefits for her parents. Instead, she was reaping the financial rewards of manipulating, abusing and taking advantage of her parents' kindness. In total, McCullough benefited from £149,697 as a result of murdering her parents, combined from their pensions and spending on their credit cards, as well as selling assets. The court also heard she spent £21,000 on online gambling between 2019 and 2023. Her lies and the fear of being exposed ultimately led to her cruelly killing her parents. The McCullough family home has since been blocked up with metal security barriers. Paul Hastings, the greengrocer at the Vineyard Shopping Center near their home, had also noticed their disappearance. He was told by McCullough that her parents, who used to purchase goods from his shop, were no longer living in Great Baddow. Mr. Hastings said her peculiar nature meant she could say things without arousing much suspicion. She came into the shop and said, "The police are after me. They think I killed my mom and dad." Mr. Hastings said, "I thought that's a bit odd but didn't think anything else of it. I just thought it was her eccentric nature." He explained McCullough would sometimes visit his shop for times a day before disappearing for the next fortnight. Family handout. Virginia McCullough was clearly taking advantage of her parents' goodwill, Detective Kirby said. Debbie Pollard said McCullough would visit the flower shop. She ran and bombarded her with food and presents. "We knew she was odd, but I would never have dreamt she would ever be capable of doing what she actually did." She said, "She's actually lived in that house all those years with her mom, and dad's remains in there. That horrifies me. Horrifies me." Both Mr. Hastings and Ms. Pollard said McCullough had also pretended to be pregnant, even creating a fake bump under her clothing. Detective Kirby said, "The details of this case shock and horrify even the most experienced of murder detectives." Throughout her sentencing on Friday, McCullough stared at the floor emotionless. It was only when she listened back to her interview with police, describing how she murdered her mother, that she began to weep. She looked so innocent. She was just sat there listening to the radio. McCullough told the officers, "I did go in 3 times to build up some gumption, but I knew I had to get it done and can't hesitate." She was just staring at me in disbelief. Essex Police. Virginia McCullough was jailed for life on Friday to serve a minimum of 36 years behind bars. Detective Kirby from Essex Police said her otherwise composed reaction in court was typical of the considered meticulous murderer she was. "Throughout the course of our investigation, we have built a picture of the vast levels of deceit, betrayal, and fraud she engaged in," he said. "It was on a shocking and monumental scale. McCullough lied about almost every aspect of her life, maintaining a charade to deceive everyone close to her and clearly taking advantage of her parents' goodwill. She is an intelligent and adept manipulator who chose to kill her parents callously and without a thought for them or those who continue to suffer as a result of their loss."